Welcome back to Kearsarge Valley Magazine. We're continuing our time with Don Wright. Don, thanks for having us here and talking to me today.
Thank you for being here.
Last week, we talked about your experience on the farm and what that meant to you, and then the transition back to living with your mother and grandparents in Aurora. So take me from there. The next big transition for you was Germany?
Yes, so my mother had eventually became an engineer at Curtiss Wright, and when the war wound down, and she is an opportunist, they were hiring Foreign Service operatives for occupying Germany, and she was sent to Berlin, Germany, and I went back to living with my grandmother, or lived with her, and my mother sent for me, and I was 12 years old. My grandmother took me to New York City and put me on a Victory ship all by myself at 12 years old and sailed over to Bremerhaven, and I had a blast. I said, not only do I have a 150-acre farm, but I've got my own ship, because I was on there with 6 State Department girls who were so sick, and they were supposed to be looking after me, and I ended up taking care of them.
Oh.
So we I went to Berlin. We lived in a house on Am Fischtal in Zehlendorf, where the last Battle of Berlin had taken place. Oh. My best friend, German friend over there, had been in that battle as an 11-year-old combatant. And he was the only Nazi I met when I was over there. He was proud to have been a Hitler Youth. Everybody else I met in Germany was, quote, glad that the Americans had come because they really didn't like Hitler.
Well, that's good to know. This is 1947.
This is 1947.
Right after the war.
Right after the war. It had. So I went to school there and had many, many adventures. My playground was destroyed tanks and artillery pieces. We had guns laying over. I mean, it was just, for a kid who had lived through the whole Second War.
Yeah.
It was just amazing to me. So we stayed there for a year, and I had my very first flight on an airplane coming back, and it was American Overseas Airlines, and it took us 24 hours in the air to get from Berlin back to New York City.
Wow.
Of which I got to fly the airplane at least 4 hours. They brought me up in the cockpit, and when I left that flight, I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a pilot for American Airlines.
How prophetic.
It was indeed.
That's great.
It was indeed.
You ended up at a ranch in South America?
I did. We went from there. I ended up in Panama, where my mother remarried an Army colonel. We ended up from there in El Paso, where I spent 2 full years, the longest I had ever stayed in one place in my life. My best friend was Bob Stewart, who owned a ranch down in Mexico. And he asked if I would like to go, and we did. And just to show you my grandmother in action, he said, we're out of ammunition down there. And what he didn't tell me is that what we shot is what we ate. And if you didn't shoot anything, you lived on frijoles. Oh. So I got it to be a keen shot. But when we walked across the border, we must have carried 10,000 shells with us. And my grandmother made bandoleros around us and then covered us up with a suit coat. I think she might have been a smuggler in her youth. But we did. We lived on the ranch, and it was just an absolutely magnificent time, but a tough time.
Yeah.
Because I had, for 2 summers down there, we worked the ranch, but we worked mostly at just getting food. It was for somebody who came from, if not a poor life, I went from poor to rich to poor to rich.
Yeah. But
to see what it's like to live with poverty like you cannot imagine. The Mexicano was a 30-year-old woman would have had 12 children, of which maybe 8 of them were alive, and these 30-year-old women looked like they were 60. Oh. Happy. They were so happy. And every night we go to sleep with the Mexican singing in the background, and it was just a very romantic time. It was an experience I treasured.
I bet you learned lessons then that you could not probably have learned any other way.
If we have One that I can remember very distinctly, we had gone out with a bunch of Mexicanos, some of the ranch hands. There were about 4 of us, and we got further than we should have. And we were sitting on a stump. We were starved. We had run out of beans, we had run out of tortillas, and we hadn't had meat in 2 days. And we're sitting there, and there was this cow and a calf. And all of a sudden, Luce, the foreman, picks up his rifle. The calf moved away. He killed the calf, ran over, and he cut out the back strap. We jumped on our horses and ran about a mile or 2 away. And they lit a quit fire, and we gorged on this meat. And you could see the vultures in the background, and I said to Bob, Bob, whose cow was that? He says, you don't want to know. I said, what do they do to people like that? And he said, you don't want to know that either.
Oh, no.
But I was full.
Well, you know, it's amazing you're alive today. All your experiences, and maybe the military was the least of them, from what I'm getting. We'll see. Well, that's great. Well, we're going to transition next to the Air Force, and we'll do that next week. So,
okay, good.
Thanks so much,
Good.
Don.
Thank you.